Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pastana, and we're here today with special guest Dustan Jackson, who's here to share with us his new book, Surviving Life, Mugged in Mexico. So are you struggling with an addiction or just life in general? Well, today's guest is going to speak to just that. So Dustan Jackson is an author and father of 5 who actively participates in a disabled golf league. Raised in a Mormon household, Dustan's early life was profoundly shaped by his faith. However, by the age of 17, he had left the church and fell into a life of substance abuse. His life reached a critical point during a trip to Cancun, Mexico, where he woke up in a ditch, badly beaten, on the verge of death, with no memory of what had happened. It was then that Dustan had a stark realization about his life trajectory. So let's welcome to the show, Dustan Jackson.
Hi, thanks, Marianne.
Well, what an honor it is to have you here and to talk about this book. I mean, the whole book is Surviving Life, Mugged in Mexico, but there's so much more to this. So why don't we start in the beginning?
Perfect.
So I mean, I know a lot of people struggle with different things in life, and your journey takes you one that deals with having to, come to terms with a drinking problem.
Correct. So actually, that's why I called it Surviving Life. So when we get into what is surviving life, Mugged in Mexico, well, Mugged in Mexico is just the cherry on top. That's just where we finally write the final chapter. But surviving life is every decision that we all make when we're trying to survive life, supposedly. And how do we cope with it? What are the things that we do in our lives to justify the decisions that we make and how we're choosing to live our life? And it sucks because it can be tough. You know, some of the decisions that we make can be bad ones and they can be bad coping mechanisms. Mine was to deal with all the stresses and problems with life. I chose drinking. And I know that's not just me, but for a lot of people out there, it's an easy way to blow off steam at the end of the week. And so that's where it got into Surviving Life, Mugged in Mexico. So um, to just kind of start off a little bit in the beginning, what had happened in my childhood is I was raised in an LDS home. We were very religious, but there were some other things that happened in my home that turned me against. And anybody that is raised in Utah or raised in the Mormon religion in Utah can understand the pressures that the LDS religion caused. But the funny part is I've talked to other people outside of Utah, and it seems that those pressures are in any religion that you have out there. Like any kind of, whether you're Catholic, Baptist, LDS, whatever it is, the religion is, you have these expectations where you can feel like you're the black sheep or the pressures of life are too much for you. And so you end up making these life-altering bad decisions that can really hurt you. Well, for me as a child, when I was growing up, it was the LDS religion, and I had uh, I just had some parents that had some issues, and it talks more about that in the book when you guys get into that. But that's all I'll brush into that as far as right now. But there was some abuse, and I was the only child that was not from those two. He was my stepfather. All the other children inside were his kids, and so it put kind of a different pressure between me and him in our relationship that was abusive. And I found out later in life there was other things that my mom had done on the back end that had been not so great towards his children. And so it just seemed like a whole spaghetti mess of issues that were going on. But beyond all that, I turned 17 and I was frustrated with the church. I was frustrated with my parents, and I'm sure a bunch of people can relate to that. And so in turning away from the church, I decided to drink. I decided to do what every kid does back in those days, and you party with your friends and you go out all weekend. And it's just kind of how it went. And I know a lot of people that went down that path. Unfortunately, a lot of people didn't come back from that path. They either got hooked on drugs or alcohol. And I even have one year, it's called the bad year in my book, that I did drugs. And I went down that path and it was not great. But I think we ended up calling the chapter Breaking Bad. So it's actually kind of funny. But after that, my vice to get rid of my problems was to drink. I would blow off steam drinking. Now, the reason it became, and the reason that I went down this path is because of how common alcohol is in our lifestyles nowadays and how it's just normal. And I know I've read this and I've seen this in other places, but if you think about it, when you want to actually go spend time with somebody, if I was a full grown adult and I was like, hey, let's go for a walk in the park, you'd look at me like I was probably a creep. But if I say, hey, let's go grab a drink at the bar after work, you're like, sure, we can do that. And you think about weddings or barbecues or boating activities, anything you decide to do as an activity, you involve your drinking. And so it's just become so common and so normal. So to do things without it has been almost weird. And so for me, I was raised in well, when I got through all of this and I decided to start my career off, I actually started off as a firefighter in Bullhead City, Arizona. And after I'd made it onto the department and everything, we'd been there for a little bit. This was the first time that alcohol had actually become an issue in my life. But everybody down there drank. Everybody, you took the boat out on the river or you went down to the beach and you had a few drinks or you drank all day. But it was a common thing for everybody. It wasn't just you and your neighbor. It was every single person in the entire town. It was a party town. And so as a firefighter, we'd get off, we'd have our 4 days and we'd all go out as buddies. And that's what we do. We drink and we go back to work. And so you get stuck in this cycle. For me, it didn't really become addictive until later on, but this was the first time that I could justify just drinking all the time and just didn't never think it was going to stop in my life. Well, there's two things that happened that were very critical that caused me to write this book. And both of them, I was drinking, going to get a can of tobacco, two major life incidences. The first one I'm going to tell you about right now is the fire department where it cost me a lot. And then the second one was when I got mugged in Mexico. So we'll get to that part of the story. But as the first one, we went out, we were on the river, took the boat out that day. We were drinking, having a good old time. We come off the river and we decide to go to Yo-Yo's Tacos. Well, I decided that I'm going to stop at the gas station to get a can of chew because I was running out at that time. And this is where I really talk about my spiritual journey. And this is where I really see the Spirit take forth in my life, where it's like, hey, Dustin, wake up. I'm trying to do it as nice as possible right now, but it's time for you to wake up. And you'll see that as you go through the book too. So I'm in the gas station and I'm getting a can of tobacco and my car's parked out in the parking lot. And no joke, some lady comes in off the side and just clean runs into my car. And I'm staring at it inside of the gas station as I watch this happen. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you got to be kidding me. So I'm like, all right, let's walk out there after I get the can of chew. And I'm talking to the lady and I'm like, hey, guess what? Today's your lucky day because I've been drinking all day and you can go. And she just happened to be the one good Samaritan in the whole entire world. Where she was like, no, it's okay. I'm going to call the cops. And I'm going to let them know. And I want to make sure everything gets taken care of. And we fix your vehicle. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So she had already called the police. Of course, they show up. Me being an idiot, I'm flashing my firefighter badge, trying to get out of it. I'm a new firefighter. I don't understand the respects of it, but I'm doing everything I can to try to weasel out of getting this ticket. And he can see all the empty bottles in the back of my truck. And so I'm like, crap. So he books me. And now I got to go in and talk to the chief. The problem is when you're in a small town like that and something major happens to a firefighter, it always becomes front page news. So I know that it's going to be seen by the chief. It's not something I can hide. So I go in and I'm like, next day I sit down and my father works there and other people in the department that I had known and tested high with were there to support me. And so everybody was, as we're trying to talk to the chief, he goes, let me tell you the backstory. 4 other firefighters that year had gotten DUIs and all of them had kept their jobs. Actually, as a matter of fact, the firefighter that got a DUI before me, it was his second DUI and he lost his license this time and he couldn't even drive the fire truck anymore. So I'm thinking in my mind, I'm like, perfect. This is my first one. Not a real big offense. I don't lose my license. Everything's good. Well, he turns around and the chief looks at me and he goes, Dustin, he goes, I can appreciate you being honest and open with me and everything. And he goes, but we've had 4 other firefighters get DUIs this year and we can't have this happen anymore. I need to make an example out of you. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me right now, man? This is a joke, right? And he goes, I'm sorry, Dustin, but I'm going to let you go. So this was my first spiritual experience, right? It's the first time God's knocking on my door, like, hey, Dustin, it's time for you to wake up. And he does it nicely. All I did was lose my job. That's it. Didn't spend any time, wasn't in jail, didn't lose a bunch of other crazy stuff. But that was a lot to me. I mean, I spent 4 years working to get into the fire department. And anybody that knows how hard it is to get on as a firefighter can understand that, especially 20 years ago. So I'm distraught. I'm devastated. I'd moved to Arizona where my father was at this time. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go back to Utah. I'll just test for some departments up there. Well, 2 years went by and I never got on. But I quit. I quit drinking at that time. After I got the DUI, it was an eye-opening experience. So I'm like, I'm going to quit. Well, and the time is old as tale with any drinker or alcoholic out there. Obviously, it's not that easy to just stop drinking. And this is where I say we normally start with our problems, and how we justify how we drink. And the reason I say that is because for any person that's actually become an alcoholic, nobody likes the taste of alcohol the first time you do it. And the first hangover, you were throwing up in the toilet. So your body has rejected it from since day one. So for you to get addicted to something, you really have to put yourself in that scenario multiple times over and over again. Jordan B. Peterson calls it a positive feedback loop. And once we create this nerve cycle, we have a problem, we create a solution inside of our body so many times, it becomes a strong habit and a bad one. Well, mine was this is where I started curing my problems with alcohol. So 2 years down the road, I've lost my job and I'm trying to figure out, navigate things, and I start drinking again. Problems hit, life hits. And so there's everything else is in the middle of that. And I have about 15 other stories from running calls as a firefighter on people who had been alcoholics or drunks and rolled their cars to millions of other situations that, as any addict can understand, ruins your life. But I want to fast forward to the major portion of it, which is the mugged in Mexico. And the reason I correlate these 2 stories is because these are the 2 main ones that really made me open my eyes, look in the mirror, and put everything into this book that I decided to, because originally I was just going to write the story of being mugged in Mexico. But when I started writing and I started looking at why all of these things happened in my life, it really forced me to look in the mirror. And I don't even know if I was even honest with myself with being an alcoholic until I wrote this book. I still didn't think I had a problem. I would quit now and again, so I didn't think I was addicted to it. And I'd stop for 6 months and then go back to it. And me and my wife, we like to party at times. So it was that's just how my life went. I didn't think it was an issue. I didn't think it was ever going to be. So I kept going back and I kept going back. Well, anyway, so fast forward to Mexico. We'd actually quit drinking at this time too. I'd quit drinking for almost a year at this. And so it was during the pandemic. February 12th, 2022 is when the incident happened. And we decided to take all-inclusive vacation to Mexico because they had these crazy discounts going on. Now, mind you, I've never been to Mexico. I've been on cruise ships where you stop in a little bit, but I've never physically been to the actual city and being able to walk around. Because once people hear this story, they're going to call me dumb. How did you not know to not do this? Well, I just didn't. I wasn't that smart. So we were down there. We were at the all-inclusive resort. It was for 1 week, and it was the last day. And what had happened, the reason I had started drinking or had gotten to this point is halfway through the trip, we're in Mexico and I'd convinced the wife, and I don't know if anybody's ever been to an all-inclusive resort, but they just hand you bottles of like Grey Goose. Like they leave them in your room. It's crazy. It's an alcohol extreme, unfortunately. But so I get there and we keep ourselves from doing it for a little bit, but I eventually, we had hid the bottles in the closet as any person would normally do, or try to get rid of them. I think, I think we just stuffed them in the closet at that time. But yeah, halfway through, I'd convinced my wife to start drinking. I was like, hey, we can do this. It's okay. We're not near the kids. We're at an all-inclusive resort. We don't have to go anywhere. We don't have to do anything. We can hang out and have a drink here. And of course, she agrees. She's like, yeah, of course. We're in the perfect environment to do this. This is what this environment's for. And we were great all the way until that last day. And the last day, I had ran out of tobacco, chewing tobacco. And I was like, oh, well, I'm not going to wait 16 hours to get home. So I'm going to go get it. And this is where you'll have to read the really intricate parts of the book, because this is where we get separated. And this is where my wife ends up getting on the plane and I'm stuck in a ditch. And so I won't give away all the secrets. But what had happened is the last day is I decided to take a taxi cab to go get a can of tobacco. And I went to the first gas station and I walked in to talk to the store clerk, and he didn't have anything. He was like a few packs of cigarettes and some petrol, or gas. I keep saying petrol because that's how it reads down there. But that's pretty much all they had. So I was like, okay, well, I just walked back out to the guy that was in the cab, and I looked at him. I said, showed him my can of chewing. I'm like, hey, do you know where I can find this? And he's like, oh yeah, I know where to take you. From this point, I remember him driving me somewhere. I remember getting out of the vehicle, and I remember walking towards a green building, and I remember that's it. Next thing I know, I am waking up in a ditch. My left arm or shoulder does not work anymore. I have extreme nerve damage. When the doctor looked at it, the way he looked at it, he was like, Dustin, this isn't like getting hit with a bat or them attacking you. He goes, your shoulder was in a million pieces. He goes, it looks like somebody threw you from a vehicle at 45 miles an hour and you landed directly on your shoulder. So now I just have all these pains and stuff just holding up little parts of my shoulder. It'll never work again. I ended up having to do an invasive nerve surgery, which was another part of my spiritual journey, because it was a brachial plexus specialist, and there's only 5 of them. And I think this side of the country, and one of them just happens to be in Utah and at the University of Utah. So I was like, oh, thank you again, because there could be a chance that I wouldn't have gotten any of my arm back if she couldn't have done a nerve replacement. Because the way it works with nerves is it grows back extremely slow. And I'm talking even after 2 years, my parts of my shoulder are still numb to this day, because the nerve hasn't repaired itself yet. But because they say it goes so slow, she goes, if I don't put a different nerve in there, there's a chance that you just lose everything, because it'll die off and your muscle will die before we can start getting the contractions back to it. So I'm like, okay, let's do it. So she takes a nerve from another part of my body. Unfortunately, the nerve that was damaged was a big one. She goes, I can't take another big nerve, because if I take another big nerve from a part of your body, then it's going to disable that part of your body. So we're going to have to take a smaller nerve, which means you will get some of your arm back, but it might only be like 40 to 60%. And well, 40 to 60% is better than nothing. So let's go ahead and shoot for that. And so we were having those honest conversations that it was just never going to be back again. And so a couple other things that they did to me is, and the reason that I believe they honestly left me for dead, is they cut me with a machete along the back of my knee, and they cut off the bottom of my foot, the heel on the bottom of my foot. And luckily they didn't get through. They didn't do complete damage, but they did enough to cut. I don't know if the blade was sharp enough or whatever they were using. Thank goodness. This is another part of that spiritual journey, but they cut me and they dumped my body, threw me from the vehicle and left me there. At that point in time, it took me about 2.5 days to get back to a normal situation, to be able to get home.
Well, on that note, we're going to pause here for a quick break. We've been speaking with Dustan Jackson in regards to his new book, Surviving Life, Mugged in Mexico. We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors.
Have you dreamt of writing your own book but felt lost on where to start? Introducing DIYbook.us, your personal guide to bringing stories to life. Whether it's your life story, business insights, or unique experiences, DIYbook.us makes it easy and affordable. With our step-by-step online program, you'll receive a weekly email prompt tailored to you. Don't let your story go untold. Visit www.diybook.us and start your writing journey today with our free 7-day trial. DIYbook.us, where your story comes to life.
It's one thing to become attached to your perfect home, but what do you do when that home becomes attached to you? A family in dire need of a fresh start, a mysterious house tied to the past. Buried deep within the foundation of the old Far Hill Manor lies a centuries-old secret. Dark forces or something stronger just waiting to be discovered. Caretaker, a supernatural thriller by breakout authors R.J. Halpert.
Are you a coffee lover who wants to make a difference? Look no further than Fire Department Coffee, a veteran-owned business that gives back to support first responders in need. Each batch of coffee is freshly roasted right here in the USA by a dedicated team of first responders and coffee experts. So when you enjoy a cup of Fire Department coffee, you're not only drinking high-quality coffee, you're supporting members of your community. Start your day with a coffee that gives back. Visit firedepartmentcoffee.com. That's fire, D-E-P-T, coffee.com.
There comes a moment when you realize you're somewhere special. When you discover that each beautiful creature that you see has been rescued from a life of absolute horror and brought to this incredibly free place. Here's where their lives were forever changed and where yours will as well. Discover over 500 tigers, bears, and lions at the brand new visitor center at the Wild Animal Sanctuary just outside Denver. For more information, visit wildanimalsanctuary.org. Discover true freedom at the Wild Animal Sanctuary.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
I'd like to thank Jason Eastwood at Guitarfulness for sharing his inspiring music and talent with us. His music is known worldwide for cultivating atmospheres of harmony, inner peace, and clarity. Visit Jason's website at guitarfulness.com. Join his newsletter, be part of his community, and download his music. Welcome back to Moments with Marianne. We're here today with special guest Dustan Jackson, who's sharing with us his new book, Surviving Life, Mugged in Mexico. Before we left for a break, we were talking about what it took for you to get home.
From there, that all of that journey is inside of the book, and it's from police officers not willing to help me, times that I actually went to lay down and just die, because I didn't think I was going to make it out. I mean, I was butt naked, bleeding, begging for help, and I didn't speak the language. And I was half in and out of it because we'd been drinking for 3-4 days straight. So the factor of me surviving any of this was 2%. I wasn't going to make it, and especially without help. There was 3 people that helped me along the way outside of my wife. So there was, I mean, all of them were guardian angels. Even my wife at the time, it was amazing. She was a godsend with everybody to get this back together. But that's kind of the, okay, Dustan, I decided to have my last drink in Mexico, and look what it did. I end my story there because that's where we ended up. I guess that's where I ended up learning and growing and changing my life. And so from that point on, I've actually quit drinking. I've quit chewing tobacco. And the last part of the chapter, it actually does talk about a few things of finding yourself after this, because if you've been an alcoholic, especially as long as I have for over 20 years, if anything that you've done that long, it becomes really impossible to find yourself again, because everything you did again was with drinking, your barbecues, your family events, your baby showers, your kids' birthdays, the vacations you went on, the Friday nights you went out. I mean, every time you go out to dinner, your life revolves around alcohol. And they talk about this, if you ever are a person in addiction, is how you find yourself. And we are working. There is something that I'm working on. It's called the program after the program, and it's for alcoholics because of the stigma behind it and because of how we hide it as people. And what we do is we get to this point where you might only see the guy drinking once or twice a week, so you think nothing of it, and you're like, oh, he can stop anytime, but you don't know what's going on behind closed doors. And then so when you're just like, just stop, you're telling your partner or whoever you're with, just stop drinking, and they're having this hard time. Well, again, remember how long it took them to get addicted. There's so much more to get off of it, and they don't realize what it takes. Not only just getting rid of the actual addiction and habit itself, but the way you feel inside. You've numbed yourself for years. And so in the program after the program, we talk about a few things like flow and other stuff that you have to find inside yourself, activities, replace that. And one of the things is, how do you be happy again? And happiness is always a huge factor for everybody, and especially in the world that we live in with the pressures of society all the time. How do we be happy? Well, there's three things, and I feel like we buy our happiness now. Every single time that we want to do something, we go buy an ice cream cone, we buy a new car, we buy a new house, we buy a new wardrobe, or whatever it is that we need to make ourselves feel better. I feel like we're purchasing it, and that's not that might cause joy for a minute, but it's not true happiness, because if you think about it, after your new car smell is gone, or after the ice cream cone is gone, or after somebody spills something on your new rug or carpet, or your clothes fade, you're not happy with them anymore. You don't feel the same way. So there's this minor joy, but you really have to find this happiness outside of this when you quit doing these things. And the three things that I found, and I do talk about this in the book, that cause that everlasting happiness without actually having to purchase anything, is the first one is accomplishment. When you accomplish things, you think about when you graduated high school, you make it through an anniversary date with your partner, or something that you were able to accomplish or grow, a promotion in a job, something you worked hard for. You feel that happiness, that burningness inside. And that's something you can actually get without spending money. You can try to accomplish new things, new tasks every day. Number two is service, learning to serve other people. When you think about when you get a chance to help someone out or do something for somebody, and that joy you feel, that burning sensation inside, you get happy about the situation. And the best part is even when you think about these moments, not just when you do them, but when you think back on them, they create that same happiness inside of you. And so it's like this everlasting happiness. But number three, the third and final one, and this is the hardest one. It was hard for me too, because you have to see it in the good and the bad, but to be grateful for the good and for the bad. To be grateful that I got mugged in Mexico, because I call it the wake-up call that I didn't know I needed. And though anybody from the outside could look in and go, you got to stop drinking, Dustin, we don't see ourselves that way. We see that stigma in ourselves that we don't have a problem. We go on with life. Things were normal in my life, so I didn't feel like there was an issue. And that's what we do, and that's how we convince ourselves. We don't ever want to think bad about ourselves. So as much as the rest of the world can look at us and go, yeah, I can see that, we don't always see it for ourselves. And a lot of that's the program after the program. We look into those things and we help each other. And if anybody that wants to get involved with that, you can just follow me. Go to Dustan Jackson, and that's Dustin with an A, Dustan. Jackson is the last name, like Michael Jackson. So, but those things, we have to figure out how to, I guess, it just changed the chemical makeup in ourselves. And that's what we're trying to do, to create the happiness, to create new habits, to find the things that will bring us the joy in life that we need without obviously breaking the bank and just spending money all the time for the rest of us who don't have all of those resources. So
It seems that you're very lucky to be alive, and there's obviously a plan as to why you are still here, because anyone else that went through the type of injuries you went through, and you're in a foreign country, all these things are compounded. It's a miracle that you're alive.
you are right, 100%.
So I know you were talking about the program after the program, and I think that that's so empowering, because a lot of times people, I hear when we've done the 12 steps and we're moving into something else, it's like, okay, so how do we move into another place of happiness and fulfillment, and being able to just constantly be in this walk of, okay, this is the new life that I'm living, and not go back. So I know you talked about a couple things that the program offers. Does it also offer like a community?
Yes. So that's actually where it starts. So the community is more, I guess that's the reason I actually wanted to get involved with it, because I realize as I go to AA or I go to other programs or I talk at these rehabilitation centers, the only way we do this is with people. I mean, if I had to be stuck in a room by myself trying to deal with all of my problems and the million things that the world throws at us, especially nowadays more than ever, I would easily go back to drinking. I'd give up 100 times over again. And so that's exactly what it is it's we want to bring a community together to do this, but we also want you to be able to find inside yourself. And I'm glad you brought that up, because there is so many things that you can dig into. And I know flow is, I say that, but there's so much that goes into that, and finding within yourself where you find your hobbies and this happiness of things that you can do that actually drive yourself to be more positive in life and happier in life. And as you do it every single day, you slowly start to change these habits. So I don't want to get too off base, because I know there's like a million things that I could dive into with that. But in all basis, is what it is the program after program is helping people that, exactly like you said, you get out of the 12-step program or you get out of rehab and somebody comes up to you and they pat you on the back and they go, "Good job, you did it. Okay, now let's get back to life." And you're like, "Well, wait a minute. This is day one of my life, and I have got a million things that I have got to change, adjust, become better at." And I think we really lose right there. That's where because people will go to rehab for a year and a half. And so you think they come back and you're like, perfect. This guy is ready to become a normal father, get his 9-to-5 job, do this, do this, do this. But they're not. All they've done is got rid of the psychological damage that it was doing at the time, and maybe the physical addiction that was creating their body to be going back to this. Now they have to refine everything about themselves, depending on how long they were addicted to. I mean, if you're like me for 20 years, I'm over 2 years in recovery and I'm still figuring things out. It's like I'm still going through moments where I'm like, oh my gosh, how have I not noticed this about myself? Or how did I get caught up in such the bad habits that I'm doing on a daily basis? And so it's not just about kicking the habit, and it's not just about getting rid of the actual addiction. It's about redefining who you are as a person, and finding that, whether it's simple things as writing every single day, that gives you your flow, that creates your happiness, and maybe telling your story is something you want to do. Or maybe you're an introvert and that's not what you like to do. Maybe you like to design or draw, or maybe sports is your hobby. And when you're out playing golf, you're in your flow. But we find these things that you can attach yourself to, and they can be anything. I mean, they've even proven that underwater basket weaving can provide flow. And when your body is in flow, you're actually happy, and your body's happy, and it creates these this neurological change inside of yourself. And so there's, like I said, there's so much more that we could dig into it, but the program after the program is to help you redefine yourself, to actually become the person, because you're not just starting over. Life is hard enough to start over. I see college kids with college degrees working at McDonald's. Life is already hard. Now to start backwards or start with a loss in life or missing years, oh my gosh, there's so much that you have to overcome. And that's what I don't think we look at. That's where the program after the program really helps people look at that and go, oh, okay, so this is step one in redefining myself. Okay, so I'm not alone by being lost and having no idea where to start my life again. Okay, cool. This is the community. This is the group that's going to be able to do those things. And so, yes, that's exactly what it is, because we've all got to start over. It's not just being sober. It's okay. And these are for the people that are really committed too. Like I don't want to just say that we all jump into this and do this. When we're getting into this program, we understand how hard it takes or how hard it is to quit. So you have to be there, and you can tell when somebody is ready. And when they're ready to grow, man, it's amazing to see the changes in them. And that's exactly who the program after the program is for. And so it's for anybody that's like that, that's ready to kind of take that next step and really actually get their life back. Sober coaching is I think some of the terminology that's being used right now, and the other people that develop it out there.
So, how would you say your spiritual relationship is at this time? Because I know that has been a big piece throughout your lifetime.
Oh, thank you so much for asking that, because it is amazing. So being raised LDS, I had this hate in my heart when I finally turned away from the church, because that's all my life was about for 17 years. And so when I really turned away, I was like, nope, I don't believe in God. I don't believe in anything. And I'm mad at the world. I'm full of piss and vinegar. And after this woke up, oh my gosh, it's like being hit over the head with a stick by God, because I felt like I woke up to my purpose. It was the most amazing thing. And it's almost like he told me, he goes, Dustin, he says, I've taken your arm this one time. He goes, you do it again and I will take your other arm. But every person that I talk to, every time I get up and I get to speak in front of groups or something, there's always a connection. There's always some kind of spirit that's there, and I can feel it. And I know that this is exactly what he wanted and how he wanted it. And the crazy part is it's almost like I had to go through the pain, though. I had to go through all of this. This might be a little bit off base, but it's kind of crazy because it just has to go with the Mormon religion. So I know not a lot of people will connect with this, but if you know LDS people, they have what you call a patriarchal blessing. And a patriarchal blessing you get when you're 12 years old, and it kind of dictates your life. They come on, they put their hands on there, and they tell you what is actually going to happen to you for the rest of your life. And I'm not kidding you. I had hesitation believing a lot of these things too when I was younger. I was like, oh yeah, you just don't determine my life. But there was a line in there that always stuck with me. And even to this day, it kills me, because he goes, Dustin, you and God decided your life before you came down, and you knew every little thing that was going to happen, and you both agreed on it. And I'm like, it burns even now just thinking about it. I'm like, oh my gosh. Because every single thing that I had to go through, from the abuse to losing my job, to losing families, to losing my arm, there is a meaning, there's a reason behind every single one of them. And now more than ever, I feel his spirit every day. And that's honestly what I try to do as I wake up, and I try to connect with people and find that in everybody, so that we can keep growing. Because unfortunately, with phones and TVs and stuff, we're more disconnected than ever. I mean, you listen to all the stuff that's going on, and even all the psychological stuff that's happening with these kids that are stuck on their phones all day, and it's becoming a chemical addiction, because this dopamine kicks all the time. And so you're addicted to your phone, but you're completely cut off with reality. And so they don't know how to communicate. They don't know how to have normal relationships. And everything that's being put in the middle of us right now in our society, I think, is deterring away from becoming spiritual and being connected and being mindful. And so I try to be mindful every day. I try to get out there and connect every single day. I don't want to sound too overbearing in preaching the gospel and being like, yes, I want people to listen, but it's I do. I take that step every single day, and I hope that I'm working in the right direction with the people that I'm running into, and I'm not scaring them off.
Well, Dustin, can you share your website with us one more time where people can connect with you and learn more about your book, Surviving Life?
Yeah, so you can find me at dustanjackson.com. You just got to DUSTAN Jackson, JACKSON.com. You can find the book on Amazon, The Surviving Life Mugged in Mexico. And any of my handles, I think I'm the only DUSTAN in the entire world. I don't know why. I mean, maybe my mom knew something before I did, even at this point, but I'm the only AN when it comes to Dustin. So you type that in and it'll automatically pull up everything in Google.
Well, Dustin, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
And thank you so much. And I appreciate everything.
Well, thank you, Dustin. It has been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your new book, Surviving Life, Mugged in Mexico. Surviving Life's available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie retailers. And remember, support our indie bookstores. If you don't see it on the shelf, just ask for them to order it. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.